when I was young is a presentation I gave to the kids in our local junior school. That's me in the middle. Ken Mallison, born December the 7th, 1935. So when I was young, it was a time in the 1940s, the Second World War, and just after the Second World War. What I want to do is to show the difference between now and the 1940s. So this will include clothing, schools, housing, food, entertainment, etc. So let's look at now and then. These are typical clothes worn by children in 2018. Cool clothes, smart clothes, expensive clothes. What about then? These are typical clothes worn by children in the 1940s. The kids wore short trousers. I didn't wear long trousers till I was 12. Girls never wore long trousers. This picture shows a group of children, and if you look at the coats, you'll see small labels attached to them. These were evacuees. These were children who, during the war, were sent away from the towns which were being bombed into the countryside. I usually stop at this point and ask the kids, have they seen or read the book Good Night, Mr. Tom, which is about a boy called William who was evacuated into the countryside. This shows a typical modern classroom, nice, light and spacious. Nowadays, the teachers are usually kind and considerate. You have to make the right choices or you can be punished. You might even have to stay in at playtime. Look at the school in the 1940s. Some children didn't even have a desk. At the side here you can see two children who are standing. Children had to behave, do as you're told, and speak only when you're spoken to. Some teachers had a cane, and if you misbehaved, they would hit you across your hand or even your bottom. When I was at grammar school, one of the teachers was Mr. Pearson. We called him Killer Pearson because he had a thick leather belt and he would whack you across your bottom. Of course, there were many nice teachers too. I showed them this Chinese proverb, which is in one of my schools, and asked them if they could read it. Of course, they can't. So then I translate it. I tell them I can read Chinese. So there we are. This proverb says, the teacher will open the door, but you must enter. What does that really mean? Well, as I say to them, teachers don't really teach. A good teacher will provide you with all the information you need in an easy to understand manner, but you have to learn it. They open the door, but you must enter and learn it. Everyone learns. I mean, I'm 83 and I'm still learning. I've been learning all my life. And as an example, I say, well, you can learn something useful or you can learn something interesting. And at this point, I show them the wash label on my jumper and ask them to look at theirs. And I say, well, this is a wash label. I've always known this will tell you what temperature you need to wash your clothes at. But I've only just recently learned that if I keep the wash label to my left-hand side, when I put the jumper on, the jumper will always be on the right way. So that's useful information. Then I showed them a copy of a Roald Dahl book, maybe The Giraffe, The Pelly and Me, and asked them, have they heard of Roald Dahl? And of course they all have. I said, did you know that Roald Dahl was a spy? During the war, he was in America in the embassy working as a spy, sending information back to Britain. So that's information I learned, which is not useful, but interesting. But I sometimes put these flash pictures in just to wake them up to see if they're interested or not. What about houses? This shows a typical housing in 2018. Nice, modern, spacious. And these show houses then, terrace houses. There's still some of these around even now, but lots of people lived in those houses then, especially the poorer people. And this shows you the effects of bombing, where the doors and windows are still out. The government decided to build nice, smart houses called prefabricated houses. These were houses built on a factory somewhere and then taken to the site and erected there. They were very nice, actually. People liked those because they were modern. They had all the mod cons in them. There were also council houses. There were council houses before the war, but they were pretty basic. This shows a modern 1950s council house, which was quite comfortable. These are houses for the better off. Middle class, such as bankers and things like that, and upper class, such as lords and ladies. Here's a bathroom. Now, a bath, maybe a shower, a toilet, a wash basin, hot and cold water, plumbing to drain away the water. Very nice. Then, a tin bath, a chamber pot. For most families, Friday night was bath night. The bath was filled with cold water, and then hot water was added from the water heated in the kettle on the fire. Mum would use the bath first, then Dad, and the children, all in the same water, except to be topped up with hot water now and again. The bath would then be carried outside and emptied, making sure the baby had not been left in. I was a baby. Most people have an outside lavatory in the backyard, although in some cases several houses had to share one lavatory. If you needed to go in the night, then you used a chamber pot and emptied it the next day. It was all called a gazunder because it was kept under the bed. At this point, I usually give them a small anecdote of when I was young. When I was young, I used to stay with my sister and her husband in Holbeach near Spalding. They had a small cottage which had no electricity, no running water, no drains, paraffin lights and a paraffin stove for cooking on. The toilet was in the garden, a small wooden hut with a plank with a hole in the middle, and you did your business into that and it went into a hole in the ground. A bit smelly at times. You used to pour disinfectant down to keep it clean. And every now and again, Steve, who was my sister's husband, would move the shed or the hut a few feet up the ground, fill in the old hole by digging a new hole, and that was the new toilet. So very primitive, but that was what it was like when I was young. Not everyone's like that, of course. Ups to Daisy, another interrupter. What about wash day? Well, nowadays we have washing machines. This is an automatic dryer. It washes and dries. Throw your clothes in, put some powder in, push a button, and away you go. When it's dry, take it out and you use a steam iron, modern steam iron, to make sure they're nice and dry. What about those? Wash day. Here's a boiler. Coal was put in, water was put in, and the clothes were put in with soap powder to be washed, boiled up. A little oven there, you could put things in there, like a bit of bread maybe, if you wanted to. The clothes are taken out and put in this thing called a dolly tub. That thing there, you pushed up and down to agitate the water. When they were out of there and rinsed, they went through a mangle. That take all the water out. You have to be careful that you didn't get your fingers trapped inside there. It was quite painful. The clothes horse, which we do have now, we even the clothes horses to dry clothes. Ironing was done by these things called smoothing irons. They were heated on the fire to heat the clothes or iron the clothes. So it's being wash day then was very hard. Not like nowadays, it's quite easy. This shows a picture of the first Hoover washing machine in 1952. It was £30 plus £13.07 tax. Now that's more than 30%. That was called purchase tax. Nowadays, we have the similar thing called value added tax. That's only 20%. Most people complain about it, but it was worse off then. The average pay was only £9 a week. Look at the supermarket, lots of food. You can go and buy almost any type of food and as much as you want. You can have as much sugar, butter, eggs and tea as you want. You can buy as many sweets and chocolates as you want. It wasn't like that in the 1940s. Then, there were no supermarkets, only small grocery shops. Food was in very short supply. So the government introduced rationing to try to make sure everyone had a decent supply of food. Everyone was given a ration book with coupons inside. You had to go to only one shop, register your name and buy your groceries there. There's a typical ration book. It had coupons inside. And if you can see this is how much rationing was allowed. 2 ounces of tea, 2 ounces of jam, 4 ounces of margarine, 1 egg a fortnight. Well, at this point, I also show them a small bag of sweets, 2 ounces, and say, this is how many sweets you could buy. You could only have those sort of sweets once a week. And again, a small anecdote, where I lived, there was a small sweet shop, and every weekend, the lady in the sweet shop would give me some money for the bus to go down into the warehouse, pick up a couple of bags or boxes of sweets, and bring them back to her. In the warehouse, they always gave me some sweets. When I came back, she gave me sixpence and also gave me some sweets. So I was never short of sweets. Cars. Well, here's some modern cars. Flashy cars. They have heaters, wipers, automatic. They can even park themselves, some of them. Then, there weren't many cars. Only doctors, lawyers, bankers, and rich people had a car. And some of these people, cars didn't even have a heater. The normal transport was walking or buses. I had to walk to school 2 miles every day, even if it was raining. The photo shows a typical car in the 1940s, and this car at the bottom was like the car I had in 1960. That was my first car. Not very comfortable. The wipers were manual wipers where you use your hand to wipe them. There were no windscreen washers. You'd lean outside the window and squirt water on the window. There was no heater, no indicators, just a little thing at the side which you'd flap out or put your arm outside the window to indicate you're going right or left. Another one. These people all interrupt my talk. What about this? Modern flat screen TV, DVD recorder, PlayStation, laptop, mobile phone, iPad. Everyone has a modern electronic device. Even children use social media like Facebook, and you can communicate instantly with people thousands of miles away. TV pictures are coloured and even 3D. You can choose from hundreds of different channels. What about then? In 1940s radio, we called it a wireless. In 1940s telephone, dial telephone. Most people didn't have a telephone. Although TV had been invented, only the very rich had one. I didn't see a TV till I was 17 years old, and it looked like the one below. Very small screen, black and white pictures, and there was only one channel, BBC. The first mobile phone was in 1973, and to show them what it was like, I have a sort of an example of that, which I passed around the class. It's very heavy and very bulky, and compared it to our modern mobile phones. Cinemas. Well, here's a modern cinema, the Odeon perhaps. We've got one in town, which has several screens, and you can choose from many films. Not very interesting. You only see one film, the rest of it's all advertising. Then, this is the cinema I went to on a Saturday morning. It's a bit better there than it was when I went to the cinema. I think it was a bingo hall then. There were some nicer cinemas, of course, but not for kids. They were a bit too expensive. So, what did children do in the 1940s? No TV, no smartphone, no tablet, only 2 ounces of sweets a week. You must be thinking, what a miserable life. But you'll be wrong. Because we had none of these, we had to go out and play and use our imagination. You can imagine you was king of the world or a princess in a distant castle. You could be anybody you wanted to. When you watch TV, you are watching someone else's imagination. With radio, you can close your eyes and imagine yourself. Again, at this point, a little anecdote. When I was young, I used to listen to the radio quite a bit. And I always remember that I think it was a Thursday night, about 7 o'clock, I would sit in the room, my mum and dad had gone out, and behind me there was a door with a little window above it. And I listened to Valentine Dial, the man in black, the storyteller. He told pretty scary stories. And the one I remember most of all was The Beast with 5 Fingers. In this story, someone had cut someone's hand off to get a ring, and the hand was crawling around the house all by itself. Now, if you can imagine, I was sat in my chair with my back to the door. And the radio message said something like, the hand crawled slowly along the corridor. It came to the door and crawled up the door towards the quarter light before dropping to the floor. Now, my imagination went mad that I could imagine this hand crawling up the door and dropping to my room. But that was my imagination. Saturday morning was the most exciting day of the week. We'd all go to the local pitch house for the children's matinee. There was always a cartoon, maybe Mickey Mouse, followed by a main film. Everybody liked a cowboy film. During the cartoon, it was not so noisy. You could just about hear yourself speak. But during the main film, it was very, very noisy. If it was a cowboy, the children would sometimes stand on the seats, cheering or booing, and pretend to fire guns. Some would even have pretend fights. It was really exciting. Can you imagine doing that these days? No. Police. There were not many cars in the 1940s. So most policemen were on foot or on bicycles. The policeman was usually called a bobby. And I asked the kids, why were they called a bobby? Several answers, sometimes about the hats and that sort of thing. But then I asked them, have you heard of Robert Peel? Because Robert Peel introduced the police force in England. And so Robert, shortened to Bobby, they were called bobbies, sometimes peelers after Peel. In America, they were called coppers. This was because the first sort of police force there was a band of men going around to stop trouble, and they all wore a copper badge, hence coppers. So there we are. Times are very different, but because we had to be very careful with our food, and because we had to go out to exercise and not sit watching TV or playing on a tablet, most children were a little bit underweight and had to be given supplements such as cod liver oil. In fact, I remember queuing for cod liver oil with my mum. Cod liver oil and some horrible white stuff, which I had no idea what it was, but it tasted revolting. Cod liver oil wasn't bad because it was molten cod liver oil. Now most people are overweight, including me. It's not my fault though. I'm overweight as I have a condition which is incurable. It's called ICSEC, which means I can't stop eating chocolate. Money. But now we use a pound coin for our money. We have 1p, 2p, 5p, etc. And calculations are fairly easy. There are 100 pennies to £1. So if we have a shopping list, £1 56 pence, £2 75 pence, add it together, 6 and 5 is 11, add 1, 8 and 5 is 13, add 1, £4 31. Not too difficult to add up. I read that the average pocket money today is about £5. And I usually ask the kids who gets £5 and what do they do for it. And the average wage is about £500 a week. Back in my days, it was still £1, but it was divided differently. They used the D because a small Roman coin was called a denarius, so it's a quarter D, half a D, and so on. We used it, still called it a penny or a pence. So we have quarter pence, half pence, 1 pence, 3 pence. And at this point, I've got all the coins on a board, which I pass around the class so they can see what the coins look like, and also some notes. 1 shilling was 12 pennies, and there were 20 shillings to a pound. So £1 was 240 pence. Calculations were not so easy. If we had a shopping list, it would look like £1, 10 shillings, 6pence, £2, 16 shillings and 8pence. Add these together, 6 and 8 is 14, but we don't put 4 down and carry 1. We put 2 down and carry 1. So imagine that getting the sats is quite difficult. There's also the guinea, which was equal to £1 and 1 shilling. All the rich people use guineas. We're paying guineas because it sounds posh anyway. There's still a guinea today, but it's not legal tender. I think horse traders use the guineas when they're buying horses, and there's also the guineas race, and that sort of thing. I got 6 pence pocket money. 6 pence is probably about 2pence now, I don't know. But with that, I was able to go to the pictures, buy a bun, and get a packet of chips. Are we better off now? Well then, if you look at actual prices, it doesn't make any sense, because when you say, 6pence bought me all that sort of thing, so I must have been better off then. But listen, let's look at some comparison. What we've got to do is compare how long we have to work to buy something now compared to how long we had to work then to buy the same sort of thing. So look at 1950. That's the only ones I can get any sort of information from. To buy a house, we had to work for 164 weeks. Now we have to work 360 weeks. To buy a car then, we had to work 96 weeks. Now we only have to work 48 weeks. For a week's wage, in 1950, we could buy 43 packs of cigarettes. Now we could buy 62. Petrol, we could buy 40 gallons. Now we could buy 100. Mars bars, if you could buy them, which you probably couldn't, you'd get 122. Now you get 500. Beer, now, then was 76 pints, now 140. So you can see that apart from houses, everything was more expensive back in 1950. Learning. Is it easier to learn now than it was then? Well, this presentation, if I had to do this presentation in the 1940s, I would have to go down to my local library and look through reams and reams of books to find any information. I could look at the Encyclopedia Britannica, which is, I think, 26 volumes of information. But of course, they've been printed, so the information I'm reading is not really up to date. For example, if I wanted to find when was the last time someone rode a penny farthing cycle, I would look in there. I'd probably find it round about the beginning of the century, probably. But if I want to find out now, all I do is pick up my phone and ask, when was the last time somebody rode a penny farthing cycle? And I ask the kids, when do you think? And they will probably give me all sorts of answers from 50 years ago to 30 years ago. And then I show them this next picture, which is Mark Beaumont in June 2018, breaking the 127-year-old British record for riding a penny farthing cycle. At this point, I wind up the talk and show them this extra clip by everybody. So that's my presentation I give to the kids, probably a little bit more extra when I'm doing it, but most of the time they enjoy it. I have found that they have to sit quite a long time. So what I do now is halfway through the presentation, I ask them all to stand up, stamp their feet 3 times, turn round, stamp their feet 3 times, and sit down. Nothing to do with the 1940s, just to give them some exercise. So that's my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. Bye.